Chapter 9 of The Wonderful History of Peter Schlemihl by Adelbert von Chamisso. Translated by Frederick H. Hedge. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 9. I sat there without shadow and without money, but a heavy weight was taken from my bosom. I was calm. Had I not also lost my love, or had I in that loss felt myself free from blame, I believe that I should have been happy. But I knew not what I should do. I examined my pockets. I found yet several gold pieces there. I counted them and laughed. I had my horses below at the inn. I was ashamed of returning thither. I must at least wait till the sun was gone down. It stood yet high in the heavens. I laid myself down in the shade of the nearest trees and calmly fell asleep. Lovely shapes blended themselves before me in charming dance into a pleasing dream. Mina, with a flower wreath in her hair, floated by me and smiled kindly upon me. The noble Bendel also was crowned with flowers and went past with a friendly greeting. I saw many besides, and I believe thee too, Chamissot, in the distant throng. A bright light appeared, but no one had a shadow, and what was stranger, it had by no means a bad effect. Flowers and songs, love and joy, under groves of palm. I could neither hold fast nor interpret the moving, lightly floating, lovable forms, but I knew that I dreamed such a dream with joy, and was careful to avoid waking. I was already awake, but still kept my eyes closed in order to retain the fading apparition longer before my soul. I finally opened my eyes. The sun stood still high in the heavens, but in the east. I had slept through the night. I took it for a sign that I should not return to the inn. I gave up readily as lost what I yet possessed there, and determined to strike on foot into a branch road which led along the wood-grown feet of the mountains, leaving it to fate to fulfill what it had yet in store for me. I looked not behind me, and thought not even of applying to Bendel, whom I left rich behind me, and which I could readily have done. I considered the new character which I should support in the world. My dress was very modest. I had on an old black polonaise, which I had already worn in Berlin, and which, I know not how, had first come again into my hands for this journey. I had also a travelling cap on my head, a pair of old boots on my feet. I arose and cut me on the spot a knotty stick as a memorial, and pursued my wandering. I met in the wood an old peasant who friendly greeted me, and with whom I entered into conversation. I inquired like an inquisitive traveller, first the way, then about the country and its inhabitants, the productions of the mountains, and many such things. He answered my questions sensibly and loquaciously. We came to the bed of a mountain torrent, which had spread its devastations over a wide tract of the forest. I shuddered involuntarily at the sun-bright space, and allowed the countryman to go first. But in the midst of this dangerous spot he stood still and turned to relate to me the history of this desolation. He saw immediately my defect, and paused in the midst of his discourse. "But how does that happen? The gentleman has actually no shadow." "Alas, alas," replied I, sighing, "during a long and severe illness my hair, nails, and shadow fell off. See, father, at my age my hair, which is renewed again, is quite white, the nails very short, and the shadow that will not grow again." "Aye," responded the old man, shaking his head. "No shadow! That is bad. That was a bad illness that the gentleman had." But he did not continue his narrative, and at the next crossway which presented itself left me without saying a word. Bitter tears trembled anew upon my cheeks, and my cheerfulness was gone. I pursued my way with a sorrowful heart, and sought no further the society of men. I kept myself in the darkest wood, and was many a time compelled, in order to pass over a space where the sun shone, to wait for whole hours, lest some human eye should forbid me the transit. In the evening I sought shelter in the villages. I went particularly in quest of a mine in the mountains, where I hoped to get work under the earth, since, besides that my present situation made it imperative that I should provide for my support, I had discovered that the most active labor alone could protect me from my own annihilating thoughts. A few rainy days advanced me well on the way, but at the expense of my boots, whose soles had been calculated for Count Peter, and not for the pedestrian laborer. I was already barefoot, and had to procure a pair of new boots. The next morning I transacted this business with much gravity in a village where a wake was being held, and where in a booth old and new boots were sold. I selected and bargained long. I was forced to deny myself a new pair, which I would gladly have had, for the extravagant price frightened me. I therefore contented myself with an old pair, which were yet good and strong, and which the handsome blond-haired boy who kept the stall for present cash payment handed to me with a friendly smile and wished me good luck on my journey. I put them on at once and left the place by the northern gate. I was deeply absorbed in my thoughts and scarcely saw where I set my feet, for I was pondering on the mine which I hoped to reach by evening, and where I hardly knew how I should introduce myself. I had not advanced 200 strides when I observed that I had gone out of the way. I therefore looked round me, and found myself in a wild and ancient forest, where the axe appeared never to have been wielded. I still pressed forward a few steps, and beheld myself in the midst of desert rocks, which were overgrown only with moss and lichens, and between which lay fields of snow and ice. The air was intensely cold. I looked round. The wood had vanished behind me. I took a few strides more, and around me reigned the silence of death. The ice whereon I stood boundlessly extended itself, and on it rested a thick, heavy fog. The sun stood blood-red on the edge of the horizon. The cold was insupportable. I knew not what had happened to me. The benumbing frost compelled me to hasten my steps. I heard only the roar of distant waters. A step, and I was on the icy margin of an ocean. Innumerable herds of seals plunged rushing before me in the flood. I pursued this shore. I saw naked rocks, land, birch and pine forests. I now advanced for a few minutes right onward. It became stifling hot. I looked around. I stood amongst beautifully cultivated rice fields and beneath mulberry trees. I seated myself in their shade. I looked at my watch. I had left the market town only a quarter of an hour before. I fancied that I dreamed. I bit my tongue to awake myself, but I was really awake. I closed my eyes in order to collect my thoughts. I heard before me singular accents pronounced through the nose. I looked up. Two Chinese, unmistakable from their Asiatic physiognomy, if indeed I could have given no credit to their costume, addressed me in their speech with the accustomed salutations of their country. I arose and stepped 2 paces backward. I saw them no more. The landscape was totally changed. Trees and forests instead of rice fields. I contemplated these trees and the plants which bloomed around me, which I recognized as the growth of southeastern Asia. I wished to approach one of these trees. 1 step, and again all was changed. I marched now like a recruit who is drilled, and strode slowly and with measured steps. Wonderfully diversified lands, rivers, meadows, mountain chains, steppes, deserts of sand, unrolled themselves before my astonished eyes. There was no doubt of it. I had 7-league boots on my feet. End of chapter 9.